What if the person you least expected held the key to your greatest revelation? For Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire with a portfolio that included sprawling estates and luxury cars, this was a question that seemed unfathomable, yet it would soon become the crux of his unexpected journey. The city of Los Angeles, known for its sun-kissed beaches and glamorous lifestyles, often masked the reality that lay beneath the surface, a reality filled with desperation, dreams deferred, and the stark contrast between wealth and poverty. Ethan was always the dreamer, even amidst the opulence that surrounded him. He had spent his life building an empire, fueled by ambition and an insatiable hunger for success. But beneath the tailored suits and polished demeanor lay a vulnerability that he rarely acknowledged. As a child of immigrant parents, he had seen the struggles they faced, the sacrifices they made just for a chance at a better life. Yet, in his quest for success, he had buried those memories deep, convinced that wealth would protect him from the pain of the past. Despite his accomplishments, Ethan was haunted by an emptiness he couldn't quite define. He had all the trappings of success, money, power, and influence, but the thrill of achievement had begun to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of isolation. His friends were mostly other affluent individuals, their conversations revolving around stock prices and weekend getaways, leaving little room for genuine connection. Ethan longed for something real, something that transcended the superficiality of his world. He wanted to rediscover the dreams he had once held close, dreams of making a meaningful impact, of creating a legacy that mattered. On a particularly sweltering afternoon, as Ethan drove through the streets of downtown LA, he encountered a scene that would change the course of his life. A young woman, no older than 25, sat on the sidewalk, her clothes tattered and her expression weary. Her name was Maya, and she was one of countless individuals who had fallen through the cracks of society. Despite her hardships, there was a spark in her eyes, a mixture of resilience and defiance that caught Ethan off guard. Maya had once been a student, her dreams of becoming a social worker shattered by circumstances beyond her control. She had faced a series of unfortunate events, a family tragedy, the loss of her job, and the spiraling effects of an economy that seemed indifferent to her plight. Now she found herself in the unforgiving streets of Los Angeles, battling not only the elements, but the societal stigma that came with being homeless. It was a world that Ethan had only seen from the safety of his car, a world that felt foreign, yet strangely familiar. Their initial meeting was a collision of disparate worlds, Ethan with his designer sunglasses and expensive watch, and Maya with her sun-kissed skin and wild, unkempt hair. He had initially intended to drive past, but something compelled him to stop. As they exchanged words, he felt an inexplicable connection forming, a bond that transcended their social standings. Maya spoke with passion about her dreams of helping others, her voice laced with the pain of lost opportunities. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, and it terrified him. Yet, the world around them was not kind. The vibrant city that housed their dreams was also a battleground of societal injustices. Ethan's life had been shaped by privilege, while Maya's was a testament to resilience amidst adversity. As they began to forge a friendship, the stark realities of their lives became increasingly evident. Ethan was constantly reminded of the superficiality of his own existence, where success was measured by wealth rather than impact. Meanwhile, Maya's struggles illuminated the systemic failures that plagued society, forcing Ethan to confront the uncomfortable truths he had long ignored. As their friendship blossomed, Ethan found himself grappling with a profound sense of guilt. Here was Maya, a woman who had lost everything, yet still fought to reclaim her life and dreams. Meanwhile, he had everything but felt trapped in a gilded cage of expectations. The emotional toll of their friendship weighed heavily on him, and with every conversation he felt a growing urge to do more, to take action rather than remain a passive observer. But with this desire came a crushing realization. His wealth, which he had once believed to be a blessing, now seemed like a curse. It separated him from the very people he wanted to help, and he began to feel the walls of his privileged world closing in. The more he learned about the struggles faced by those like Maya, the more he understood that he had been living in a bubble, shielded from the harsh realities of life. The defining moment came when Ethan decided to host a charity event to raise funds for homeless shelters in Los Angeles. He envisioned a glamorous affair, a gathering of the city's elite, where he could leverage his wealth to make a difference. However, as he began planning, he encountered pushback from his social circle. Many scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as a waste of time. "Why help them when you can help yourself?" one of his closest friends remarked, echoing a sentiment he had heard too often. This moment of betrayal from those he once considered allies shattered something inside him. The very people he had aligned himself with were resisting change, clinging to their privilege while ignoring the struggles of others. For Ethan, this was the final straw. He realized that he had to choose between the comfort of his affluent life and the opportunity to make a meaningful impact. The emotional upheaval was overwhelming. The weight of expectation, the fear of failure, and the loneliness of his existence collided within him, propelling him into a crisis of identity. Who was he without his wealth? What did it mean to be successful? These questions echoed in his mind as he faced the stark reality of his situation. The journey he was embarking on would not only test his resolve but also redefine his understanding of purpose and connection. As Ethan continued to navigate the complexities of his newfound friendship with Maya, he found himself at a crossroads. The world outside was harsh and unforgiving, but within the depths of his heart he felt a flicker of hope igniting, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could be a catalyst for change. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but it was also brimming with possibilities. In a city where dreams often collided with despair, Ethan Caldwell was about to discover that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had become a carefully constructed facade, a display of wealth that hid the more profound struggles I had long ignored. My friendship with Maya was awakening something in me, something raw and real, and it terrified me. I wanted to help her. I wanted to help others like her. But every time I envisioned taking a stand, I was met with a cacophony of doubt. What if I failed? What if I was just another rich guy trying to play savior? As I planned the charity event, the tension within me grew. I spent hours agonizing over guest lists and venue options. But the more I immersed myself in the logistics, the more I felt a chasm opening between my intentions and the reality of my privileged life. I was acutely aware that my peers, those same friends who raised their eyebrows at my plans, inhabited a world where money could buy anything, but compassion was a commodity too expensive to bother with. Then came the day I decided to invite Maya to the planning meeting. I hoped her presence would lend authenticity to my efforts and ground me in the purpose I was trying to cultivate. When I told her about the event, her eyes lit up with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Ethan, do you really think they'll care?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with the bitterness of experience. Her question struck me and I found myself defensive. "Of course they'll care, they just need to see the impact," I replied. But even in my own words I sensed a faltering confidence. What did I know about their world? I had never lived in the shadows, and now I was trying to drag others into the light of my privilege. Maya shrugged, her expression unreadable. "It's not that simple. People like me, we can't just be a cause for your charity gala. We're not a project." I felt my heart drop. The truth of her words washed over me, and I realized that I was still seeing her through a lens of my own making, one that reduced her struggles to mere data points in my grand vision of philanthropy. As the days passed, Maya and I spent more time together, and I felt my admiration for her grow. She introduced me to the reality of life on the streets, the unrelenting survival mode that consumed her every waking moment. Each story she shared was a lesson in resilience, yet every revelation chipped away at my comfort. I learned about the systemic failures that kept people like her trapped, and I began to feel the weight of my own complicity in that system. Yet, my growing passion for change was met with a stark reality. My friends remained skeptical, and the closer I got to planning the event, the louder their criticisms grew. "You're just throwing money at a problem, Ethan," one of them sneered during a dinner party. "It's not going to change anything." Their dismissive attitudes began to gnaw at me, testing my resolve. I could feel the walls closing in again, the gilded cage I had tried so hard to break free from feeling tighter than ever. In the midst of this turmoil, I sought the advice of an old mentor, David, who had once guided me in my early days of business. He was respected in our circle, a man who had built a fortune but also had a reputation for giving back. I hoped his endorsement would lend credibility to my cause and perhaps offer me the guidance I desperately needed. Over coffee, I laid out my plans, feeling a flicker of hope as I spoke. However, David's response was not what I had anticipated. "Ethan, you're a smart guy, but don't be naive. These people don't want your charity. They want economic opportunity. You're not solving the problem by throwing a party." I felt my face flush. His words cut deep, igniting a fear I'd been trying to ignore. What if I was indeed just a performer in this tragic play, unaware of my role? I left that meeting feeling more lost than ever. The voices of doubt grew louder, echoing my inner turmoil. I was terrified of failing, of being seen as just another wealthy individual indulging in a moment of altruism without any real understanding of the complexities involved. Could I really make a difference? Or was I destined to remain a spectator in my own life? As the event drew closer, I tried to balance my spiraling self-doubt with the genuine desire to help. I began reaching out to local organizations, seeking their input on how to make the event meaningful. But the more I learned, the more I began to feel the depth of my ignorance. I would catch myself in moments of frustration, wanting to fix everything in one fell swoop, but realizing that change was not a one-time event. It was a lifelong commitment. Maya's unwavering spirit became my anchor, yet it also forced me to confront my own weaknesses. I remember one particularly difficult day when we were walking through a neighborhood that had once been her home. As we passed a dilapidated building, she suddenly stopped and turned to me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "This was my home," she whispered. The pain in her voice cut through me like a knife. In that moment, I felt utterly powerless. I had come to admire her strength, but witnessing her vulnerability shattered my preconceptions. I was no longer just a wealthy man trying to save someone. I was a friend standing beside a woman whose dreams had been crushed by circumstances beyond her control. It was a heavy responsibility, and I faltered, unsure of how to support her, without overstepping boundaries I didn't fully understand. As I grappled with my emotions, I noticed a shift in Maya. The more I tried to help, the more walls she seemed to erect. I could see the conflict in her expression. She wanted to trust me, but the scars of her past made it difficult. I understood, but it hurt nonetheless. I feared that my attempts to provide assistance were only reinforcing her belief that she was a project to be fixed rather than a partner in this journey. The day of the charity event finally arrived, and I stood in front of a room full of LA's elite. The glitz and glamour of the evening felt overwhelming as I prepared to share my vision. As the speeches began, I felt the weight of every word I had rehearsed pressing down on my chest. I was terrified of being judged, of being seen as a charlatan in a room full of skeptics. But then I saw Maya standing at the back of the room, her presence grounding me. I was reminded of our conversations, the raw honesty we had shared, and the dreams she held close to her heart. I took a deep breath and spoke from my heart, abandoning the rehearsed lines. I shared our story, Maya's struggles, her resilience, and the lessons I had learned from her. I could see the audience's attention shift, their expressions morphing from indifference to curiosity. As the night unfolded, I felt a growing sense of connection, both with Maya and the people in the room. Those who had once scoffed at my efforts now leaned in, asking questions, engaging in conversations about real solutions. They saw Maya not as a statistic, but as a person with dreams, and for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps I could foster change. But just as I felt the tide turning, a familiar voice broke through the excitement. One of my closest friends, who had dismissed my efforts from the beginning, stood up and challenged me. "What makes you think you can change anything? You're just a rich guy trying to play hero," he scoffed. The room fell silent, and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. His words felt like a betrayal, and for a moment I faltered, unsure of how to respond. Maya's eyes met mine, and in that instant, I knew I had to stand my ground. "I may be wealthy, but that doesn't mean I can't learn from those who have lived through hardship," I said, my voice steady, fueled by the truth I had come to understand. "This is a partnership, not a rescue mission. I'm here to listen and to act, and I hope you can join me in that journey." The tension in the room shifted, and as I looked from face to face, I saw a mix of skepticism and intrigue. My heart raced. This was a pivotal moment. I could feel the weight of my vulnerability, but rather than retreating, I leaned into it. This was not just about money or status. It was about connection, about recognizing our shared humanity. The evening ended on a hopeful note, but I knew the road ahead would be riddled with challenges. Maya and I had forged a bond that was both a source of strength and an emotional burden. I needed to confront my feelings of inadequacy and the fear of failing to live up to my new ideals. I was on a path of transformation, but it was one that demanded resilience and self-awareness. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on both the successes and the setbacks. I had begun to see the cracks in my previous understanding of wealth, privilege, and responsibility. The journey ahead was daunting, but with Maya by my side, I felt a sense of purpose that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant confronting my own limitations and fears along the way. As I dove deeper into the planning of the charity event, I was blindsided by a wave of challenges I hadn't anticipated. The day after my speech, I received a call from a prominent local newspaper wanting to cover the event. At first, I was thrilled. This was the publicity we needed. But as I spoke with the reporter, I felt the pressure mounting. They were interested not just in the event, but in my motivations, my past, and my relationship with Maya. Suddenly, I felt exposed. The reporter's pointed questions dug into the very insecurities I had been grappling with. "Why should people trust you?" she asked, her tone skeptical. "You're a wealthy man trying to fix a problem you've never lived." Her words echoed Maya's skepticism, and I felt my heart race. It was one thing to share my journey with friends and acquaintances. It was another to have it scrutinized by the public. The emotional toll was immediate. I found myself waking up in the middle of the night, my mind racing with self-doubt. Was I really doing this for the right reasons? Or was I merely seeking validation? I began to feel physically drained, a heaviness settling in my bones as I wrestled with these questions. My appetite waned, and I lost interest in the things I once enjoyed. Maya, sensing my distress, reached out to me. "You can't let them define your worth, Ethan," she said one afternoon over coffee. But instead of feeling comforted, her words only intensified my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that my privilege was a shackle, pulling me back every time I tried to move forward. As the days passed, I faced another setback. The venue I had booked for the event was suddenly double booked. The alternative options were either too expensive or unsuitable, and I felt the walls closing in on me yet again. I spent hours on the phone, frantically searching for a solution, my frustration mounting. The pressure from my friends, journalists, and now the venue management began to seep into my interactions with Maya. One evening, while brainstorming solutions over dinner, I snapped at her. "You don't understand how hard this is," I shouted, instantly regretting my words. The hurt in her eyes was palpable. "I'm trying to help you, but it seems like you're more concerned about appearances than the people you're trying to help," she replied, her voice low and trembling. The weight of her accusation hung in the air, and I felt the chasm between us widen. The conflict wasn't just external anymore, it was brewing within me too. With each misstep, I felt my resolve waver. I wanted to be better, to be someone who could enact real change, yet I was plagued by my own shortcomings. The fear of failing in my mission was becoming an all-consuming beast, clawing at my confidence. In the midst of this turmoil, I reached out to David again, seeking guidance. But instead of the reassurance I needed, he laid another harsh truth on me. "Ethan, you need to understand that change isn't just about throwing money at a problem. You have to build relationships, hear the stories, and be willing to get your hands dirty." His words struck me like a thunderbolt, igniting a flicker of determination within me, while also deepening my sense of inadequacy. As the event drew closer, I began to notice a shift among my friends. Some who had initially scoffed at my efforts were now cautiously supportive, while others remained entrenched in their skepticism. It was a confusing landscape, and I felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to appease everyone while still staying true to my mission. The pressure was immense, and I could feel the emotional strain pulling at my relationships. Then came the breaking point. Just days before the event, I received a call that a key sponsor had pulled out. My stomach dropped as I listened to the words, each one feeling like a dagger to my plans. The thought of disappointing Maya, of letting her down after all we had worked for, was unbearable. I felt like I was on the verge of a breakdown, caught between my ambition and the reality of my limitations. I confided in Maya, my voice trembling as I explained the situation. "I don't know what to do. Everything feels like it's falling apart." Her response surprised me. "Ethan, this isn't just about the event anymore. It's about us, about what we're trying to build together. We can't let this define us." Her words ignited something within me. I realized that I had been so focused on the event that I'd lost sight of the connection we were forging. Perhaps this setback was an opportunity to recalibrate, to collaborate authentically and build from the ground up. As we brainstormed together, I began to see the possibility of turning this failure into something more impactful. I reached out to local businesses and organizations that had been supportive of Maya, asking if they would join us. The response was overwhelming. People wanted to be part of something meaningful, not just a gala for the elite. The day of the event arrived, and while I was still anxious, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. As I looked around the room, I saw familiar faces, Maya's friends, local activists, and community members who had come together to support our cause. This was no longer just an event for the wealthy. It was a gathering of voices united for change. I took a moment to breathe, to absorb the energy in the room. This was what I had wanted all along, a real connection, a community coming together to support one another. As the speeches began, I looked for Maya in the crowd. Our eyes met, and in that moment I knew I had found my path forward. But just as the momentum began to build, I noticed a familiar face in the back of the room, my friend who had challenged me during my speech. He sat with a smug expression, arms crossed, a reminder of the doubts I had faced. I felt my heart race, but instead of allowing it to deter me, I drew strength from the people around me. In that moment, I realized that the true measure of success wasn't about the money raised or the accolades received. It was about the relationships forged, the stories shared, and the collective effort to uplift one another. I was no longer just a wealthy man in search of purpose. I was a partner in a movement, learning every step of the way. The evening unfolded with unexpected twists, impromptu speeches from community members sharing their stories, live music that brought people together, and an overwhelming sense of solidarity that filled the room. I watched as Maya connected with others, her laughter infectious, her spirit unyielding. I felt a sense of pride swell within me, knowing that I had played a small part in amplifying her voice. But even as we celebrated, I knew there was still much work to be done. The challenges I faced were far from over, and I understood that my journey had only just begun. I had finally embraced the complexity of my role, recognizing that it was okay to stumble and fall, as long as I was willing to rise again, stronger and more committed than ever. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Maya by my side, I felt ready to confront the obstacles that lay in wait. Together we would push against the tides of skepticism, challenge the status quo, and strive to create a world where people like her were not just seen, but celebrated. As I looked around at the faces in the room, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was not just about charity. It was about empowerment, solidarity, and the unyielding strength of community. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The evening was alive with energy, the hum of conversations and laughter filling the air. I stood at the center of it all, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The event had transformed from a mere fundraiser into something far more meaningful. But just as I began to lose myself in the atmosphere, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. I turned to see a group of people rushing in, their faces strained and anxious. It was a family from the community I had been trying to help, a mother and her 2 young children. I recognized them instantly. They had shared their story with me during one of my earlier outreach efforts. I had promised to do everything I could to support them, yet here they were looking desperate and out of sorts. The mother approached me, her voice trembling. "Ethan, we were just evicted. We have nowhere to go. I thought this event could help, that maybe we'd find some resources here." Her eyes glistened with fear and a flicker of hope, and in that moment it felt like the entire room had shifted. The chatter quieted, and all eyes turned towards us. I felt my heart race as the reality of her words sank in. The implications of their situation were profound, and suddenly, the stakes of the event felt impossibly high. I glanced at Maya, who stood frozen, her expression a mix of shock and determination. It was a pivotal moment. Their plight was a raw reminder of the very issues I was trying to address. I had been so focused on the event, the fundraising, and the public perception that I had almost lost sight of the real people behind the statistics. Emotions surged within me, a whirlwind of guilt and urgency. Here I was, a man with resources and connections, yet I felt utterly helpless. I stepped forward, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "We will find a way to help you," I said, my words carrying the weight of a vow. "Let's figure this out together." In that instant, I could see the shift in the room. Others began to rally around the family, offering support, sharing resources, and brainstorming solutions. It was as if a collective understanding had emerged. This event was not merely a social gathering, but a platform for real change. But amidst the growing sense of solidarity, I felt a deep pang of introspection. Had I truly been prepared for this? Had I really grasped the depth of the issues at play? I had come into this seeking purpose, yet I was confronted with the raw reality of lives hanging in the balance. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt the tears welling in my eyes, not just for them, but for my own shortcomings, for the privilege I often took for granted. As the evening progressed, I moved from conversation to conversation, encouraging others to engage with the family, to listen and offer what they could. Each interaction deepened my understanding of the interconnectedness of our struggles and triumphs. I realized that my role was not just as a benefactor, but as a facilitator of dialogue and action. However, that realization also came with the weight of responsibility. I had to confront my own inadequacies, my previous motivations that were more about self-validation than genuine altruism. This wasn't just about raising money. It was about creating a framework for sustainable support, one that empowered individuals rather than simply alleviating immediate burdens. Suddenly, I was faced with a decision. I could continue to leverage my wealth and connections for temporary solutions, or I could commit to a deeper involvement. The latter would mean getting my hands dirty, truly immersing myself in the community, and accepting that change would require time, effort, and vulnerability. As the night wore on, I felt a shift within me. I was no longer just a man trying to prove his worth. I was becoming a part of something larger than myself. The emotional burden I had felt earlier began to morph into a sense of purpose. I realized that the true power of this event lay not in the funds raised, but in the relationships forged and the stories shared. The family shared their story with the crowd, their voices trembling but resolute. As they spoke, I saw the audience lean in, their empathy palpable. I knew then that I had to share my own journey, the doubts I had faced, and the lessons I was learning. It was time to be honest about my struggles and my evolving understanding of privilege and responsibility. With Maya by my side, I took a deep breath and stepped onto the makeshift stage. I stand here before you not as a savior, but as someone who is learning every day about the power of community and the importance of lifting each other up, I began, my voice steady yet emotional. I've realized that my wealth does not define my worth, and that true change comes from listening, learning, and engaging with those we aim to help. The room fell silent as I spoke, and I could feel the weight of my words resonating. I talked about my journey, the challenges I faced, and how this event had transformed from a personal mission into a shared responsibility. I urged everyone to connect with the families, to share their stories, and to embrace the complexities of our shared humanity. As I finished, the crowd erupted into applause, not for me but for the family. It was a profound moment of solidarity, and I felt a warmth swell in my chest. The realization washed over me that this event had become a turning point, an awakening not just for me but for everyone in that room. The new paths that emerged from this moment were filled with possibilities. People began discussing follow-up initiatives, collaboration opportunities, and how to create lasting impact. I felt a sense of urgency and hope intertwine within me, knowing that we had the power to reshape the narrative from one of isolation to one of community. As the night drew to a close, I looked around and saw familiar faces, friends who had once doubted me, now engaged and inspired. I understood that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was no longer afraid. I had stepped onto a path of genuine connection, and I was ready to face whatever came next. In the weeks that followed, I dedicated myself to the cause with renewed vigor. There were still doubts, still moments of fear and insecurity, but I had learned to lean on the community we were building. Together, we began to tackle the complexities of the issues at hand, armed with empathy and a commitment to uplift each other. This was not just about charity anymore. It was about creating a movement that celebrated resilience, inclusion, and genuine connection. With Maya by my side, I felt ready to face the obstacles ahead, not as a wealthy man seeking redemption, but as a partner in a shared journey toward empowerment and justice. The path was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt a profound sense of belonging and purpose guiding me forward. As the weeks unfolded, the initial momentum from the event began to transform into something more potent. I felt invigorated, but with that energy came an undeniable undercurrent of anxiety. The reality of our mission weighed heavily on me. It wasn't just about raising funds anymore. It was about creating a sustainable change in the lives of those who were suffering. With every passing day, I felt the stakes rising, and the pressure to deliver became more palpable. I spent countless hours strategizing with Maya and a small team we had formed, a diverse group of individuals who had come together with a shared purpose. Among them was Sam, a local activist with a fierce commitment to social justice, and Clara, a social worker whose experience with community resources was invaluable. We met in a cramped coffee shop, poring over spreadsheets and brainstorming ideas, fueled by caffeine and a growing sense of urgency. The more we delved into the intricacies of our plan, the clearer it became that we were up against formidable obstacles. We were not only fighting against systemic issues, but also confronting local opposition. There were whispers of dissent among those who believed our efforts to uplift the community would disrupt the status quo. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach every time I thought about the impending confrontation we would have to face at the city council meeting, a critical juncture where we would present our proposal for a community resource center aimed at providing housing assistance, legal aid, and educational resources. In the days leading up to the meeting, I experienced an emotional roller coaster. My thoughts spiraled into a cacophony of doubt. What if they dismissed us? What if the funding we sought was turned away? I often found myself staring blankly at the walls of my office, grappling with the fear of failure. Would I be able to stand in front of those council members and advocate for the people I had come to care deeply about? I had never felt this kind of vulnerability before, and it was both terrifying and liberating. Maya, sensing my turmoil, pulled me aside one afternoon after a particularly grueling strategy session. "Ethan," she began, her voice calm yet firm, "you have to remember why you started this. It's not just about the numbers or the proposal. It's about the lives we're fighting for. You've already made a difference, and you need to trust that." Her words struck a chord within me, igniting a flicker of resolve. I realized that this was not merely about me or my past mistakes. It was about the community that had rallied around us, the families that were counting on us to advocate for them. I took a deep breath, allowing her encouragement to seep into my core. I had allies now, people who believed in this cause and in me, despite my shortcomings. As the day of the council meeting approached, the atmosphere grew tense. Each of us had a role to play, and I could see how our strengths complemented one another. Sam would lead the charge, speaking passionately about the need for systemic change, while Clara would provide the data and personal testimonies that could sway the council. I was to stand beside them, offering my support and sharing my own journey. But just as we thought we had everything figured out, an unexpected twist emerged. A local news station caught wind of our initiative and decided to cover our story. While this could be a boon for our cause, it also meant that our efforts would be scrutinized under a microscope. I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The visibility could either amplify our message or expose us to criticism. I had to prepare for the possibility of backlash, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. On the eve of the meeting, I sat alone in my office, reflecting on everything that had led me to this point. My mind wandered back to the family who had arrived at the fundraiser, their faces etched in my memory. I remembered the way the room had shifted when they spoke. It dawned on me that our fight was not just for resources, it was about dignity, respect, and the right to a stable life. I closed my eyes and visualized their smiles, their hopes intertwined with the dreams of countless others in the community. I felt my resolve harden. The next day, I arrived at the city council building with a mix of anticipation and anxiety thrumming in my veins. The air was thick with tension as we gathered outside, a small group of supporters holding signs that read, "Housing is a human right," and "Invest in our community." I looked at Maya, Sam, and Clara, feeling the collective energy radiate from them. This was it. We were in this together. As we entered the council chamber, I could sense the weight of the moment. We were met with a mix of skepticism and curiosity from the council members. I could feel my heart pounding as Sam began to speak, his voice steady and passionate. He laid out our vision, highlighting the urgent need for the resource center and painting a vivid picture of the community we sought to uplift. I felt a swell of pride as Clara followed up with powerful testimonies from families who had faced eviction, hunger, and despair. Their stories were heart-wrenching yet filled with a glimmer of hope. I stood silently, absorbing the gravity of our mission, and when it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Thank you for allowing us to present our case today," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor of emotion beneath. "I stand before you not just as a man of privilege, but as someone who has seen firsthand the struggles of our community. I've made mistakes, and I've had to confront my own biases, but I have learned that true change comes from listening, learning, and most importantly, acting together." As I spoke, I could see the faces of my allies behind me, Maya's fierce determination, Sam's unwavering commitment, and Clara's compassion. With each word, I felt the weight of their support, and it bolstered my courage. I shared snippets of my own journey, the lessons learned, and the realization that we are all interconnected in this fight for justice. But just as I began to feel a sense of momentum, a council member spoke up, challenging our proposal with a pointed question. What makes you think this community can manage such a resource center? Isn't this just another short-term solution that will ultimately fail? The words struck me like a blow, and for a moment, doubt threatened to seep back in. It would have been easy to retreat into defensiveness, but instead I took a breath and remembered the faces of the families we were fighting for. I recalled the mother who had shared her story at the fundraiser, the determination in her eyes. I realized that this was not just a debate, it was a chance to reaffirm our commitment and our vision. Change is not easy, I replied, my voice gaining strength, but it is possible. This community has shown resilience time and time again. Together, we can create a space that not only provides resources but serves as a hub for empowerment, education, and hope. We need this center not just for today, but for the future of our children and their children. The room fell silent, and I could feel the tension shift. The other council members began to murmur among themselves, and I sensed a crack in the opposition. I had to push forward to build on this momentum. As the discussion continued, I leaned into my allies, drawing strength from them. I could see the change in their expressions. The initial skepticism was slowly giving way to curiosity and openness. Together we addressed concerns, shared more stories, and highlighted the long-term benefits of our initiative. Then, just as it seemed we were gaining ground, an unexpected ally emerged from the shadows, a council member who had previously been quiet. She stood and spoke, sharing her own experiences with housing insecurity and the importance of community support. I watched as the room shifted once again, the power of her voice cutting through the tension. This was the moment I had hoped for, a testament to the power of vulnerability and shared experience. The council began to see our proposal not as a disruption, but as a vital step toward a more just and equitable community. As the discussion drew to a close, I felt a wave of hope wash over me, a realization that we were on the brink of something transformative. The final vote was close, but ultimately, we emerged victorious. As the council members raised their hands in favor of our proposal, the room erupted in applause. I looked around, my heart swelling with gratitude for my allies, for the community that had come together, and for the families whose stories had ignited this journey. In that moment, I understood that this was just the beginning. We had faced our doubts, our adversities, and the very real barriers to change, but we had done so together. I felt a profound sense of responsibility wash over me, knowing that the work was far from over. As I stepped away from the council chamber, I was greeted by the smiling faces of the families we had fought for. They were no longer just statistics. They were people with dreams, aspirations, and a renewed sense of hope. I looked at Maya, Sam, and Clara, and together we shared a silent acknowledgement that this was a turning point, not just for our community, but for ourselves as well. We had faced the storm and emerged stronger, united in purpose and ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. It was a moment of profound clarity. I was no longer just a man seeking redemption, but a part of a vibrant, resilient community determined to create lasting change. And so, with renewed purpose and an unwavering sense of solidarity, we embarked on the next chapter of our journey together. As the applause faded, a new wave of tension washed over me. The council members were still reeling from the unexpected support, but I could see the hesitation in their eyes. Our victory felt precarious, as if it could slip away with a single misstep. The skepticism I had sensed earlier had not completely disappeared. It lingered like a shadow, threatening to engulf the hope we had ignited. I realized that the real challenge was still ahead of us. The moment of greatest tension arrived sooner than I anticipated. Just as we were about to leave the chamber, a group of opponents led by a prominent local business owner stormed in. Their faces were etched with fury, and I felt a chill run down my spine. They had come to voice their discontent, and their power was palpable. I was acutely aware that they were not just defending their interests, they were threatening the fragile progress we had made. "This is a waste of resources," the business owner shouted, his voice booming in the chamber. "You think a community center is the answer? It's just a band-aid on a much deeper wound. You're going to ruin this neighborhood with your misguided ideals." The council members exchanged glances, and I could see the doubt creeping back into their expressions. I felt my heart race. This was it, the moment I had dreaded. I was faced with the greatest obstacle I could imagine, a direct confrontation with someone who embodied the very forces we sought to dismantle. It was more than just a battle of words. It was a clash of ideals, of futures, and of hopes. I took a deep breath, recalling Maya's encouraging words and the stories of the families that had fueled my passion. I had to stand firm, not just for myself, but for everyone who believed that change was possible. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of all our efforts resting on my shoulders. "Your concern is valid," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "But this isn't just about resources. It's about creating opportunities. We're not here to disrupt the community. We're here to unite it. We want to provide a space where people can access the services they need to thrive, not merely survive." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel the eyes of my allies on me, urging me to continue. I pressed on, recalling the testimonies that Clara had shared. Every day, families are struggling to find shelter, to secure food, to access education. We have the chance to change that narrative. Our community has the potential to flourish if we invest in its people. As I spoke, I could see the council members begin to shift in their seats. Some were nodding, others appeared contemplative, yet the business owner was relentless. "And what about the impact on property values? What about the businesses that will suffer because of this?" he countered, his voice dripping with disdain. I felt the challenge ignite a fire within me. This was not just about property values, it was about lives. "You're right to be concerned about the economic landscape," I replied, my heart pounding. "But the strength of a community lies in its people. When we uplift those who are struggling, we create a ripple effect that benefits everyone, including local businesses. Imagine a neighborhood where families have stable housing and access to education. Those are the customers who will support your businesses." The council members listened intently, their expressions shifting as they absorbed my words. I could sense the tide turning, but I knew I had to deliver a decisive blow. This proposal isn't just a plan, it's a vision for our future. We can't continue to ignore the needs of our most vulnerable. We have a moral obligation to act, and we can't let fear dictate our choices. Suddenly, from the back of the room, a voice rang out. It was one of the families whose story had touched us all. The mother who had recounted her struggles at the fundraiser stood, tears in her eyes. "I'm here today because I want my children to have a better life. I don't want them to live in fear of eviction or hunger. This center means hope for us," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Her words pierced through the tension, resonating deeply with everyone present. The business owner faltered, and the murmurs of support began to swell in the room. I felt a surge of energy coursing through me. This was the moment I had hoped for. I needed to harness that energy, to use it as fuel to propel us forward. "Together, we can rebuild," I declared, turning back to the council. "We can create a community that thrives on support, compassion, and collaboration. Let's not let fear dictate our future. Let's be the architects of a new reality, where everyone has a chance to succeed." The atmosphere shifted dramatically. I could see the council members exchanging glances, their resolve visibly strengthening. The business owner's facade of confidence began to crack as the weight of the family's testimonies settled in. Finally, the council president cleared her throat. "Thank you for your passion and your argument. We understand the importance of community support, and we will take this matter into serious consideration." As the meeting came to a close, I felt a rush of triumph mixed with relief. We had confronted our greatest challenge, and though the battle was far from over, we had made our voices heard. I turned to my allies, who were beaming with pride. We had stood together against the odds, and in that moment, I realized how crucial our bond had become. The emotional impact of the climax rippled through the room. The families who had gathered were no longer just spectators. They were participants in a movement that had the potential to redefine their lives. I looked at the mother who had spoken out, and her smile filled me with hope. We were on the brink of something transformative, not just for the community, but for ourselves as well. As we exited the chamber, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over me. We had faced our fears, confronted our adversaries, and emerged stronger. I knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but we had proven that we could stand firm in our convictions, that we could rise above the obstacles and fight for justice. With renewed determination, I turned to my allies. "This is just the beginning. We won't stop until our vision becomes a reality." Their nods of agreement fueled my resolve. Together, we would continue to advocate for those who had been silenced for too long, weaving a tapestry of change that would reverberate through our community for generations to come. As we stepped out of the chamber, I felt the weight of the moment settle around me like a heavy cloak. The air was electric with possibility, yet I was acutely aware of the invisible threads connecting each one of us. My allies, the families, and even the opposition. Our confrontation had sparked something deeper than just a debate. It had ignited a movement, a collective yearning for change that was palpable in the atmosphere. The immediate aftermath was chaotic, yet thrilling. Supporters gathered outside the council building, their faces lit with hope and determination. They hugged one another, exchanged promises to rally again, and spoke of the next steps we would take together. I stood among them, feeling a rush of gratitude for everyone who had stood by me. Clara caught my eye and grinned, her enthusiasm infectious. "We did it! I can't believe we actually did it!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight embrace. But as I reveled in the moment, I couldn't shake the sense of responsibility that lurked beneath the surface. Our victory had not erased the challenges ahead. The business owner's words echoed in my mind. What about the backlash? What about the threats that could materialize now that we had made ourselves visible? I resolved to stay vigilant, knowing that our opponents would not back down easily. In the following days, the excitement of our initial success began to crystallize into something more tangible. The council reached out to us for further discussions, wanting to involve us more deeply in the planning process for the community center. This was a breakthrough I had only dreamed of, but it also filled me with trepidation. I was suddenly thrust into a spotlight that felt too bright, too intense. Could I really be the leader this community needed? I spent hours poring over notes and materials, preparing for every meeting. I reached out to other community organizers, seeking their advice and insights. The more I learned, the more I understood the complexities of our undertaking. I had to navigate the intricacies of local politics, budget constraints, and the diverse needs of our community members. Each step forward felt like a tightrope walk, and I often questioned my ability to balance it all. Yet, amidst this whirlwind, I found unexpected solace in the connections I was forging with my allies. We began to meet regularly, sharing ideas and brainstorming ways to engage our community more effectively. Our bond deepened as we celebrated our small wins, like securing a partnership with a local nonprofit, or strategized how to address opposition. I no longer felt alone in this fight. I had a support system that buoyed me during moments of self-doubt. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized how much I had grown. Just months ago, I had been a hesitant voice, unsure of my place in this struggle. Now I was standing firm, ready to advocate for what I believed in. I realized that every step I had taken, every challenge I had faced, was not just building a community center, but shaping me into a stronger, more resilient person. I had learned the importance of listening, of empathy, and of perseverance. This was not just about a physical structure. It was about creating a legacy of hope. The impact of our efforts began to ripple through the community. Families who had long lived in fear of eviction started to speak out, sharing their stories with newfound courage. The center became a symbol of possibility for many, a place where resources would be accessible and support would be offered. I watched as people connected over shared experiences, forging friendships and alliances that would extend far beyond the center's walls. Clara was a prime example of this transformation. Once a quiet participant, she emerged as a vocal advocate, often leading discussions about community needs. It was inspiring to witness her growth. She had become a beacon of empowerment for others, proving that anyone could rise up and make a difference. Together, we organized workshops to empower residents, teaching them how to advocate for their needs and navigate the complexities of local government. The business owners' campaign against us had not dwindled entirely, but it had lost some of its fervor. As more community members rallied behind our vision, the narrative began to shift. Some local business owners approached us, wanting to collaborate rather than oppose. They saw the potential benefits of a thriving community center, more foot traffic, increased visibility, and a revitalized neighborhood. This was a pivotal moment. It reinforced my belief in the power of dialogue and collaboration. But not everyone was convinced. A small faction continued to voice their dissent, claiming that our project would ruin the neighborhood. I learned to anticipate their objections and address them directly, using data and testimonials to counter their arguments. I became more adept at navigating difficult conversations, honing my skills in negotiation and compromise. I realized that this journey was not just about advocating for a center. It was about building bridges and fostering understanding among diverse stakeholders. As I stood on the steps of the community center during its grand opening, I was overwhelmed with emotion. The crowd before me was a tapestry of faces, families, allies, local business owners, each one representing a piece of the community I had come to cherish. I felt the warmth of their support as I prepared to speak, my heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Today we stand together not just to celebrate this center, but to honor the resilience of our community, I began, my voice steady despite the tremor of excitement. This space is a testament to what we can achieve when we unite for a common purpose. It is a place of hope, healing, and opportunity. The cheers that erupted filled me with a sense of belonging and accomplishment. I shared stories of the families who had inspired our mission, the struggles they had faced, and the triumphs we had achieved together. I could see how my words resonated, how they ignited a shared vision among those present. In that moment, I understood that this was the culmination of everything we had fought for, a new beginning for our community. As I stepped down from the podium, Clara rushed up to me, her eyes sparkling with joy. "We did it! This is just the start!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight embrace. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I felt my heart swell with pride for all we had accomplished together. But even amidst the celebration, I knew that this was only the first chapter. I had witnessed the power of collective action, and I was determined to continue this work. There were still families who needed support, still issues to address. I felt a sense of duty to keep pushing forward, to ensure that our center became a true hub of transformation. In the weeks that followed, I dedicated myself to expanding our programs, collaborating with local organizations to provide services that would meet the community's needs. We hosted workshops on financial literacy, health and wellness, and job training. Each initiative brought new faces through our doors, new stories to tell, and new dreams to nurture. I often found myself in quiet moments of reflection, contemplating the journey that had led me here. I had started as a voice in the shadows, unsure of my place, but now I stood in the light, empowered and ready to lead. I recognized that my fears had once held me captive, but I had learned to embrace them and use them as fuel for growth. The road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but I was ready. I had learned the importance of resilience, the power of community, and the beauty of hope. I had come to understand that real change takes time, effort, and unwavering belief in one another. As I looked out over the bustling center, filled with laughter, learning, and connection, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had come together to create something beautiful, and I was honored to be a part of it. This was just the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold, and I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As I stood amidst the vibrant energy of the community center, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us all here. The laughter, the stories being shared, the connections being forged. This was the embodiment of our collective effort, our shared dreams, and the resilience that had fueled our fight. Each face in the crowd was a testament to the power of unity and the strength that comes from standing together for a common cause. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Clara, beside me, was animatedly discussing upcoming workshops with a group of eager participants. Her passion was contagious, and I couldn't help but feel proud of the transformation we had both undergone. No longer were we just individuals trying to make a change. We were part of something much larger, an unstoppable movement toward empowerment and equity. As the festivities continued around us, I took a moment to step aside and breathe. I thought back to the doubts I had harbored, the fears that had threatened to hold me back. I recalled the nights spent wrestling with uncertainty, questioning whether I was truly capable of leading this charge. But those moments of vulnerability had paved the way for growth. I realized now that strength wasn't merely about confidence. It was about being willing to learn, to evolve, and to lean on those around me. The echoes of our initial confrontation with the council still rang in my ears. It had been a pivotal moment, a catalyst that propelled us into action and ignited a fire in our community. We had fought not just for a center, but for a space where voices could be heard, where stories could be shared, and where healing could begin. I understood now that our journey was far from over. It was merely the foundation upon which we would build. As I looked out at the crowd once more, I envisioned a future filled with possibilities. Families would find resources that could change their lives. Individuals would discover their voices, and together we would continue to advocate for justice and equity. I felt a surge of hope wash over me, a belief that we could create lasting change. My heart swelled with gratitude for each person who had joined us on this path, for every hand that had reached out to lift another, and for the way our stories had intertwined to form a beautiful tapestry of resilience. In that spirit, I resolved to keep pushing forward, to embrace the challenges ahead as opportunities for growth. I was determined to foster an environment where everyone felt empowered to share their journey, to uplift one another, and to take action. The center would become a beacon of hope, a hub of collaboration, and a sanctuary for those seeking change. As I stepped back into the celebration, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to tackle the next battles that awaited us, be it addressing the remaining opposition, expanding our programs, or ensuring that our center remained a safe haven for all. I understood that every challenge was an invitation to rise, to learn, and to inspire others to do the same. In closing, I thought of the legacy we were building together. It was not just about bricks and mortar. It was about the values we instilled, the empowerment we fostered, and the connections we forged. We were creating a culture of solidarity, a movement that would resonate beyond our community, inspiring others to rise up in their own spaces. As I looked around, I felt a deep connection to each person present. We had come together to create something extraordinary, and in doing so, we had transformed not only our community, but also ourselves. I took a deep breath, allowing the energy of the moment to fill me with resolve. Today is just the beginning, I thought, my heart brimming with hope. Together, we will continue to champion change, to inspire one another, and to build a future where no one is left behind. With those thoughts guiding me, I stepped forward and raised my hand, signaling for the room's attention. The chatter softened, and all eyes turned toward me. I could feel the weight of their trust and the shared hope that had brought us to this moment. "My friends," I began, my voice steady yet full of emotion, "what we have achieved here is nothing short of extraordinary. But as we celebrate today, let us remember that this is not the end of our journey. It's the beginning of a new chapter. This center represents more than a place. It represents the power of unity, the strength of our voices, and the determination to make a difference." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of encouragement that swept through the room. I continued, my passion growing with each word. "Each of you has a story, a unique experience that has shaped who you are and what you bring to this movement. Together, our stories form a collective narrative that is impossible to ignore. Let us use this space to amplify those stories, to inspire others to stand with us, and to remind the world that change begins when ordinary people come together for an extraordinary purpose." I paused for a moment, scanning the room. Faces filled with pride and determination gazed back at me. "We will face obstacles," I acknowledged, my tone firm but optimistic. "There will be moments of doubt, setbacks that test our resolve, but we must remember that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger, to learn, and to prove that our cause is worth fighting for." Another wave of applause rose, but this time it was joined by cheers and affirmations from the crowd. The energy was electric, a testament to the collective will of everyone in the room. "As we leave here tonight," I concluded, "let's carry this spirit with us. Let's continue to uplift one another, to take action in ways big and small, and to ensure that this center becomes the beacon of hope and change we've all envisioned. This is our moment, and together we will create a legacy that shines for generations to come." The room erupted in celebration, but amidst the noise I felt a quiet clarity within myself. This was more than a moment of victory. It was a promise to keep moving forward no matter the odds. As I mingled with the crowd, embracing friends and exchanging words of encouragement, I realized that the fire ignited in our community was now unstoppable. Together, we had proven what was possible when people dared to dream, to stand up, and to fight for a better tomorrow. And as I stepped out into the crisp night air, I felt a profound sense of purpose. This was only the beginning.